is tilted today. We are back again with another 1-2 live session in Orange City Poker, Orlando, Florida. I haven't been publishing videos in a little while because I've been switching over to DaVinci Resolve. So we are about 20 minutes into the session, and I look down to King Jack offsuit. In the small blind, I open, and the big blind defends. We are going to see a couple of other players fold around. If you like the new graphics I put together, give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments. This took a little while to kind of put all this together, but I am happy with the results so far, and I'm interested to see what you guys think. So we are three ways to the flop. We get ace, 5, queen with 2 clubs. I'm first to act, so usually I'm just going to check when I've got multiple players behind. When they check through, I'm a little bit more confident that neither of these players has an ace. Maybe at best they might have like a middling queen, so when I put out a half pot bet, because I pick up a jack on the turn, they both fold. It's pretty standard play. We take down a small pot. If you like the content so far, hit the sub button and share this with people that you know that play poker in the Orlando area. I have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I know I'm starting a little late because I was learning a new tool, but I think if I keep the pace up, I might be able to achieve that, and I appreciate all the encouragement that you guys give me both in person and online. So next hand, we are in the cutoff, and there was an open to 10 from under the gun. I elect to 3-bet with pocket nines for isolation, trying to get heads up. A lot of times at 1-2 really don't see that many 3-bets, especially during the middle time of the day, like the daylight hours that I typically play. So that usually gets the trick done. We do get a call from under the gun, and we get a board of ace, queen, 4, rainbow. When he checks to me, he's not going to lead out with a lot of aces here. He could have a middle ace, he could have middle queens. He's obviously probably not going to have pocket aces or pocket queens very often. So half pot bet, and he calls, and we go to the turn, which I think is kind of starting to cap his range a little bit when we see the king of spades. I'm not going to put him on jack 10 very often, especially given the pre-flop raise and then the c-bet sizing. So when he checks to me again, I'm not that worried about straights here. It is possible that he could be kind of slow playing like set of 4s. It is possible he could be slow playing or like a really strong hand like ace queen offsuit, but I do put in the bet of 75, and he snap folds, so we get that one through. While we're waiting for this next hand to get going, what's your favorite food to order when you're playing poker? I like to eat stuff with a fork because I don't want to touch food and then touch cards and have to deal with napkins. Anyway, under the gun limps. It folds around to me, and I have ace 10 offsuit in the hijack. This is a pretty standard open. A lot of times these games will not be super aggressive with the 3-betting, so you can kind of get away with opening a little bit lighter. Anyway, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get like half the table calls. So we are I think 4 ways to the flop, and hey, we get an all club flop, 9-6-4 with an ace of clubs. I'm not gonna fold when she donk bets to $8, but I don't see any reason to raise here. A lot of times when someone donk bets, especially for a smaller size, it's like she's gonna have like a 9 with a 10 of clubs, or like a 6 with a 10 of clubs, or 7 of clubs, something like that. And they don't want the pot to get any bigger, so they're kind of like trying to block the bet. So when I call 8 and the guy to my left calls 8, and we get a 5 of clubs on the turn, so I've made a flush. I made a big mistake there. I should not have checked. I don't know why. I think probably in the moment I thought, oh, I've got the strongest flush, I need to be trappy here, but no, you can just put some money in the pot, because if anybody has any other club, they're gonna call, right? So we have a queen of clubs on the river. The guy beats me into the pot with jack of clubs, right? So that could have happened on the turn, and it might have actually incentivized somebody else to call, like if they had a set and they were trying to boat up. So we make a big pot there. Yeah, I think really it was well played. I just made a small mistake by not betting the turn and kind of waiting until the river. A little bit later, we're in under the gun +1, and the guy on my right limps for $2, and I decide to open with ace 10 offsuit. Typical opening sizes are 3.5 to 4 times the blind, plus a blind for every person that's limped. So in this case, 12 bucks. It would be a little bit large for an open with no limps, but it's probably just right, especially given that the low jack calls and then under the gun calls. So we are 3 ways to the flop, and we get an ace. So we get ace 3 of hearts and king of spades, and it checks to me. I'm going to be c-betting here 100% of the time, no reason to trap. So I make it 15, which is a little bit less than half pot. And the low jack thinks it over for a second and then decides to fold, and we do get a call from under the gun. So we are now heads up to the turn, and we get a 5 of diamonds. So I think in this spot, he could have something like 4-2 of hearts. That's like the strongest possible hand he could have. I think if he had a set of 3s or a set of kings, he would have raised me on the flop, worried about the hard draw. So I do put in an overbet here, and I think in retrospect that was probably a little bit too ambitious, and I could have easily put another half pot bet in. He did show, but I didn't have it in my notes what he showed. I think it was probably something like a 4, but not the 2-4, obviously. A couple hands later, the same villain is on the button, and he straddled a 5. I'm in the small blind. I have ace queen offsuit. This is a pretty easy open. I do think the sizing of 20 is a little bit too large. I probably should stick to 15, 3x in the blinds, given how many players are left behind. But it does fold all the way around to the button, who does decide to call. So we are heads up to the flop. We get a king high flop, king 7-6 rainbow. There's not much there, but this is kind of like a 3-bet pot, so I elect to check. I'll probably range check here most of the time, and he decides to take a stab at it for $20. That's about a half pot. It feels a little stabby. I do still have an ace, so I'm not ready to give up just yet. So I call, and the turn is a 9 of hearts. That doesn't improve me much, so I check, and he quickly checks behind. Then there's a 10 of diamonds on the river, so a lot of straights get there. I check, and he checks too, and I say, I've got ace high, and he's like, ace high? Me too. And he's got the worst ace, so 100% he was stabbing. Just a little bit of a defense there netted me quite a bit of a pot there. A couple hands later, I have a premium queen 9 offsuit on the button. When it limps and folds to me, I'm going to open pretty wide from the button. This table specifically is fairly passive, so I'm not super worried about getting maniac 3-betted from the blinds a lot. We do get a couple of callers. At that point, I'm like, I'm not going to play this hand unless I absolutely smack the hell out of the board. I kind of do here, right? It's a 9-high rainbow board. All 3 players check to me, so I think I can c-bet given that I've top. And when I put it in, the big blind calls, so there could be some 5-4s there. There could be possibly some slow played sets. He does check to me again on the jack of hearts, and I think that's kind of a little bit of a green light for me to start maybe a bluff line against 2 pair. So I put in a pretty big bet, $60. I have a pretty tight table image, to be honest, because I do a ton of pre-flop folding, and I only kind of get out of line like this every once in a while. So I think players are just kind of aware that generally I play a lot snugger. Sometimes I can take these more aggressive lines. It's possible he had a draw and just, was kind of thinking it over and then got rid of it. But we do take down a pretty chunky pot, and I'm happy to move on to the next one. A little bit later, we have a straddle on the button, and the small blind calls. I didn't notice in game, but she only had like $21 total in front of her, and the under the gun limps the $5 straddle as well. I have queen 10 of diamonds, so I'm going to open here for 20. In retrospect, I'd probably pick a little bit bigger sizing, like maybe 30 for isolation, but we do get a call from the button, and then the small blind jams for $1 extra, so that very heavily price incentivizes the under the gun limper to also call. So we're 4 ways to the flop, and it's a pretty big pot already. I'm going to be looking to play a little bit of fit or fold here. This kind of hand does pretty well multi-way because it's really easy to get away from if you don't hit anything, but you can definitely scoop some big pots with a diamond draw like that. We do get 1 diamond, but the under the gun player donk leads for $25, and if it was just heads up, I'd certainly peel a card, but given that there's multi-way action and the button player has a bit behind, I think it's pretty straightforward fold. This is a bit of an unusual hand, even though it's not a very big pot. We do see a limp from across the table, and I'm in the small blind with ace-10 of clubs. I am going to raise it up a little bit here. I want to have a little bit more juice in the pot in case I flop well. And we do see a min click to 32 from the big blind. So that you don't see very often. Players tend to play pretty cautiously versus a raise, and I am going to continue. I'm gonna be the cautious one in this situation. I'm going to give him credit for having aces, kings, queens. I'm going to give him credit for having pocket nines and pocket jacks. We do see a flop of queen 6-6 with 2 diamonds. That's absolutely nothing for me. There's no choice but to check here. And we see him raise for 50, which is a pot-sized bet. At this point, it's a pretty obvious fold. But I just wanted to point out sometimes you should trust your instincts. And when I fold, he shows pocket tens. If you've made it this far in the video, the YouTube retention graph tells me that you're one of the diehards and you'll probably watch all the way to the end. That's a good thing because I've got some big pots coming up. I am in the cutoff with ace-10 offsuit, and I am going to open for 12, as is my MO. Usually 4 or 5x plus 1 for every limper is the right number. We do get a bunch of folds from the button and the small blind, and the big blind decides to defend. So we are heads up to a flop. We get ace 6-4 with 2 clubs, and that's about the most amazing flop I could ask for with this hand. So when he checks to me, I c-bet for 12. I'm trying to kind of split his range and see if he's got something like flop set. I would expect to raise flop 2 pair. I would expect to raise something like ace 4. We do see a 9 of hearts on the turn, so I'm kind of considering him capped at this point, given that he's played pretty passively. So I do put in the big boy overbet on the turn, and he snap folds. As promised, this is going to be a big pot, so buckle up. I have king 10 offsuit in UTG1. I'm in early position, and I opened to 12. I have been getting a lot of folds at this table for that price, so I will continue to use it. We do see a call from the button, and following him, we see a pretty quick call from the small blind. So we are 3 ways to a flop. Now I'm going to look to flop well. I probably won't be running a big bluff line multi-way like this, but we do see a king high flop, king jack 8 rainbow, and when the small blind checks to me, I'm going to c-bet 2/3. I want to put pressure on the pot. I'm definitely looking to put pressure on somebody with, like, you know, jack 9, jack queen, 8-10, 8-9. We do see a fold from the button, and we do see a call from the small blind. So we are heads up to the turn. And now we get a queen of hearts. So this does open some potential straight draws for me. An ace or a 9 would give me a straight. And I do think that I'm still ahead, but the small blind decides to donk for 65. That's almost never a bluff. I mean, he's betting pot on the turn into me, and he only has like 115 behind. I could make the case for just folding right here. If he was a lot deeper, I'd consider calling more often. If this shallow, I probably should be folding, but I do decide to continue. And oh my gosh, we hit the 9 on the river. So I've made the 4 card straight with the 10 in the middle, and he donk jams all in for 117. This is snap call, right? Hey buddy, I'm sorry, I do have a 10. And he just mucks his hand. My guess is he probably turned 2 pair with the queen. Maybe he had queen 8, maybe he had jack queen, and I just stack him right here, and there's nothing really for him to do about it. You know, he probably should have checked to see what I was going to do. If there was a hand I could take back and replay from the session, it'd probably be this one. I'm in early position, and under the gun 1 opens, and I have pocket 9s. I elect to just call. I think I've played with this person before. They're pretty aggressive, so I want to see how this hand develops. We do see the hijack on my left call as well, and it seems like everybody else gets out of the way, so we are 3 ways to a flop. Usually with middle pairs like this, if I don't hit, I fold. So we do see a 9. I do make a set, and the player on my right checks, and I quickly check behind. You know, I could make the argument for betting there when check 2, but we do see the hijack bet, and it's a pot-sized bet, $30. Like that's pretty big. So player on the right gets out of the way, and we're now heads up. At this point, I don't know if necessarily I should be doing more raising than calling, but I do put in the call. I'm not necessarily worried about spades as much. A lot of times players, when they're in last position, will just check behind to try to realize a spade on a turn. When a spade doesn't come, the 7 of clubs comes, I check and he bets 50. Like, that's big. Like, he's got something here. I should be raising. This is where I should be putting in a big raise, like to 150 or something. Like, maybe putting him all in. If he's only got 100 behind, he's going to put it all in, right? But instead I call, and the river is a king of spades. I check again, and he tables ace 9. So he had top 2 on the flop. Like, what am I doing? I could have gotten all the money in there immediately, right? If I had raised on the flop, he would have jammed. If I had raised on the turn, he would have jammed, and I would have gotten all the money. We're back in the small blind with ace 9 of hearts and a button straddle, so I'm going to open to 15. I think this is the perfect size to open from the blinds, or maybe very early position like UTG or UTG1, given how many players behind. You do see, I do see a little bit more 3-bet squeezing in straddles, just because there's a little bit more money out there. As it is, we do get a call from the big blind and the low jack, and so we're going to be 3 ways to the flop. We get king 6 of spades, 6 of diamonds. I'm first act, and I completely missed, so obviously I don't think I can continue here, so I check, and big blind on my left bets out for $30 into a pot of 40. Like, that's probably a pretty good hand, you know. I try not to read too much into bet sizing, but it is multi-way. It is a pretty bloated pot, and you know, if the players are betting a little bit more, you know, I'm not looking to try to bluff catch here. There's really nothing for me to do but fold. So when the low jack finally folds, I go ahead and get out of the way. In this bomb pot, we're 5 ways, and another vlogger here at Orange City, Joey Pigtails, who plays PLO, talks about push and pull size bets, one meant to push players out, the other meant to pull players in. In this case, I have aces and a set of aces on the bottom board. I should be thinking about pulling players in. Instead, I get a little bit ambitious and I bet pot, $40 into 40, and we do see everyone else fold. I encourage everyone to play bomb pots because both boards qualify for the high-end promotion. It sharpens your post-flop play and it generates a ton of action. Very next hand of the session, the button has an advance because the previous hand was a bomb pot. We see the under the gun player limp, and the player on my right is going to fold, and I have ace jack offsuit in the low jack. I'm going to open to 15, which is 12 plus 1.5 blinds. It's pretty standard. I am in a little bit early position, so I could see a little bit smaller size, but I like to open enough to get 1 or maybe 2 players to call, and I don't really want to go 4 or 5 ways to any flop with any hand. Virtually ever. So we do see a call from the small blind, and we do see a call from under the gun, so we are 3 ways to a flop of ace, 6 of diamonds, 6 of clubs. This is pretty great. Obviously I have top pair, I have a very strong kicker. I'm not going to expect a lot of ace king or ace queen given that they didn't re-raise me pre-flop. When both check to me, I think I can put in a bet here given that there is a flush draw. I can size up a little bit. I would expect a check raise with some frequency here with any random 6, with the exception of maybe ace 6, which would be a very nutted hand and would probably just call. We do see a call from the small blind, so this could be a lot of diamond draws. This could be maybe some backdoor club draws, but without much else going on, the under the gun player folds out of the way, and we are heads up to a turn. We do get another 6 on the turn, so that cuts way down on the 6 frequencies, and when he checks to me, I think at this point I do need to check behind and try to give him some rope to bluff on rivers, or maybe to get ambitious with a call. We do get a 10 of clubs on the river, and he checks to me, so at this point I'm going to put in a bet. I do size up. It's going to be 60 into 90. If he's got a 10, if he picked up a 10, it's going to be hard for him to fold given that I check the turn, you know, or if he maybe has like a pair of jacks, he does put in the call, and I show him I have the ace, and he flips over a 10. So I played that one perfectly, and that was probably the max that he would have called in that situation. I lied about only wanting to take back 1 hand from the session. This hand I would also love to take back. I think I played this one pretty poorly all the way around, so just stick around and see exactly how badly I messed this up. We did get a limp from the guy on my right. We are 1 seat short, so I don't know what you call that. Is that cutoff over there? Yeah. So I opened a 12 with ace-6 offsuit on the button, and we do get a call from the small blind, and the other players do fold, so we are heads up to the flop. This is probably an ideal situation for having such a junk ace here, but we do get a flop of 6, 6, 7. Look at that. 2 hearts, and I've got a set. He checks to me, and I quickly check behind. I think in the moment I was thinking I was going to trap him, but, like, what am I doing? Like, there's a couple of draws out. There's, like, some straight draws. There's a flush draw. He checks again to me when the 10 of diamonds comes on the turn. And at this point, I do finally wake up and, like, hey, I need to bet this. Like, he's not going to bet into me when I have a set. So I make it 20 into a pot of 24, and he does think it over for a second and then call. And so we're off to a river. It's a king of diamonds. I mean, he's not going to have any diamonds here with frequency, so I check back for some dumb reason, and he shows 8, 4 of hearts. So, yeah, I wouldn't have gotten any value from him on the river, but I absolutely would have gotten a ton of value if I had started betting on the flop and then bet bigger on the turn. He would have called both streets and then folded when he missed his straight flush draw on the river. In this hand, there was a limp from early position, and then the cutoff opened to 10, and we see the button call, and I look down to pocket jacks in the big blind. So I definitely want to 3-bet here. I definitely need to put pressure on the pot right now and squeeze out some of the weaker holdings. I want to see if, you know, somebody's got a much, much stronger hand. I would expect them to 4-bet with some frequency. Aces and kings are 4-betting. Queens are almost always 4-betting. Ace-king suited is going to be 4-betting. So we need to know if those hands are out there right now. So when I bet to 40 and the limper gets out of the way, the cutoff does put in the call, and we see the button decide to give it up. So he folds. So we are heads up to the flop. There's already over $80 in the pot. This is going to be a big one, boys. Buckle up. Yeah, I have to look again because I'm like, did I have jacks? Oh, yeah, I did have jacks. We do get a really nice board, 9-5 deuce rainbow, and I don't love this check, this range check out of position. Usually in 3-bet pots, if they've got anything, they'll stab. They might stab small. If they've got a really strong hand, they tend to stab big. But he checks behind, and then we pick up an ace of hearts on the turn. And after I check to him, he does jam it all in. So it's like 100 more. I start going into the tank. I've sped up the film here because I was literally like tanking for 5 minutes or something. And in retrospect, like, come on, he's repping an ace. He's going to have a good number of aces in his continue range pre-flop, like ace-king. Ace-king's going to 4-bet more often than not, but ace-queen, ace-10's definitely not. Ace-10's going to call, and then he picks up an ace, right? So I do end up making the disciplined fold and moving on to the next hand. We're 2/3 of the way through the video. Have you hit the like button yet? I really appreciate it. If you see me in the card room, slap me on the back and tell me I need to keep editing and posting videos, right? This takes a lot of work. I appreciate all of the feedback. I appreciate you guys giving me the support and telling me, that you like what I'm doing. So I am an under the gun 1, and I do have pocket 7, so I open at 12, and we do get a call from the small blind. We are heads up, and look at that sweet baby there. I flop a set. Now, it is a monotone board, right? So, oh no, flushes. There could be flushes there. Oh, I'm so scared. But he checks it to me, and I c-bet for 10 bucks, and I think he gets the message and folds. I mean, 100%. He knew I had a set, right? He knew I had ace-high flush, right? Blah, 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 blah. Took that pot down pretty easy. This hand's kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a showcase of what can go wrong if you don't have good pre-flop discipline. I'm not a GTO chart in a trench coat, so I do get out of line sometimes. Anybody who's played with me in the card room long enough knows that I'm capable of going off chart. Okay, guys? Yes, I have 10-4. I'm on the button. Everybody limps. I limp too. Who cares, right? We're just playing junk ball here. And hey, I got a junk ball hand. Look at that. King 7 deuce with 2 diamonds. This is 10-4 diamonds. This is like the nuts on this board, right? It was a limp pot. Nobody's got ace king. Nobody has pocket kings. Nobody has pocket aces, right? So small blind leads out. A bunch of other players fold. A couple players in between call. This is just like one of those weird junk ball hands. So I am going to continue. Obviously, I don't have a made hand yet, so I can't put in a raise. I could bluff raise there maybe, but hey, we pick up the deuce of diamonds on the turn. All right, this guy in a million years is never going to put me on 10-4 diamonds. So he bets again for 18, And I think at this point, I could make the case for raising, but it is a paired board, right? So, oh my god, maybe he has pocket kings, maybe he's got a full house, maybe he has... No, he doesn't have a full house, guys. But look, no, we get a 2 on the river. Now, 100% he has a full house now. 100%, right? How does he ever not have a full house here, right? That's what I tell myself. I fold face up because I'm so good, I'm so smart. And then he shows like a 10. I think he had like a 10 of spades. And he's like, oh, I bet you could guess what the other one was. Yeah, all right, it's probably a 7. It's probably a king, some garbage king. I mean, he didn't bet the flop, so maybe it's a 7. Moving on to the next hand, I have ace king offsuit in the hijack. There's one limper on my right, so I open to 15. We do get a call from the small blind, and then when it gets back around to the low jack on my right, he puts in the call, so we are 3 ways to a flop, and it comes queen 5-4 rainbow. So little bit dry, little bit disconnected. There's a little bit of straight draw potential there, but no flush draw. When it checks to me, pretty confident to c-bet here. I make it 25. In retrospect, it probably could have sized down just a little bit. Maybe 15 would have been fine. 20 would have been fine. It's 3 ways, so you can size down a little bit more. We do see a call from both the small blind and the low jack, though. So now this is a pretty big pot. It's over $100. We get a 6 of hearts on the turn. And when they both check to me, I probably should bet here again, but I do decide to check, and a 7. So there's a 4-liner to a straight. They both check again to me. So like there's no displayed strength here. So can I bluff this one? So I put in an overbet of 125, hoping to just take it down. And unfortunately, the small blind does decide to make the call, and the low jack will get out of the way, and I get the bad news that, hey, I'm not good here. He spiked a set of 7s. What? Oh, nasty. Like, maybe, if I bet 125 on the turn, do you guys think he would call there? Do you think he would fold if I overbet the turn? Probably, right? I don't know. Sometimes at the card room, I give out these tiny plastic foods. If you've gotten one from me, leave me a comment and tell me which one it was. I know I've got a couple of Pepsi bottles out there. I got some, like, weird desserts. I've got some, like, egg rolls and some other weird stuff. So, yeah, just drop me a comment. Tell me what you got from me. In this hand, we see the low jack open for 12, and we see a couple of players between call. I look down and see ace jack offsuit in the big blind. I am going to put in a 3-bet here, although in retrospect, I probably could just flat and see what the flop looks like, but I do prefer to play pots heads up. Honestly, this is a little bit of a weak hand to 3-bet, being out of position and against multiple players. I don't think I'll do this ever again. Not in a million years, right, guys? Never gonna bluff 3-bet raise pre. So we do see the low jack call. Everybody else gets out of the way. So effective squeeze, right, guys? Effective squeeze. So we are heads up, and the pot's already over $100. Man, I really hope that I hit an ace here. Let's no, I don't. It's king, queen, deuce, rainbow. As a 3-bet pre-flop raiser, if I'm out of position, I'm range checking and then evaluating what they do. He does check behind, so I'm kind of discounting that maybe he has top king, like king, strong kings, king jack, ace king are probably not there. The turn is an 8 of diamonds, so at this point, I decide to put the gas on and bet 40, and he thinks it over for a few seconds and then slides out a smooth $120 raise. So yeah, this is equivalent to like a check raise on the turn, given that we both checked the flop. I just don't see how I can continue here. The only thing that would save me is a 10, and the price is not right. All right, I'm on the button, and we see the low jack open for 10, and the guy on my right folds, so we look down to 10-9 offsuit on the button. I think, I can, generally speaking, call a little bit wider when I'm in ultimate last position. Obviously, 10-9 offsuit's not anywhere close enough to raise, so just kind of defending. It's $10, and I am up quite a bit for the session, so I can kind of get a little bit more splashy, and we do get a very favorable flop, Queen Jack 3 Rainbow. It checks to me. I think in retrospect I probably should do some betting here when I have an open-ended straight draw, and might just take down the pot uncontested. But we do get two checks, and I check, and then the turn is an 8 of clubs, so I do pick up the straight, and both players check to me. At this point, I do put in a bet of $10, and like I said, if I raised on the flop and then hit the straight, there's already more money in the pot, and it's going to be a little bit more disguised. But we do get a single call from the low jack, so now we are heads up to the river, and that brings the 7 of diamonds. Now, what do I think he has here? It's a 4-liner. It kind of well, I mean, it's not a 4-liner. There's 4 potential straight cards out there. So there's a couple of different ways to make a straight. He checks to me again. I'm value betting, right? But I should be value betting probably very small. And so when I put the value bet of 25 out there, there's really not a lot he can do to call if he's got something like a jack or like a single queen. That's still kind of a lot given the way the board ran out. So I think in retrospect, probably a smaller bet, like maybe 15, might have gotten a curious call. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Sometimes people ask me if I have them on camera, and I'm like, do you see what is on the ceiling? There's cameras everywhere in here. Literally every square inch of this room is covered in cameras. Anyway, I have king queen offsuit under the gun. I open to 15, and we get a call out of the late position player. And and a lot of times in this situation, this is a strong starting hand. We don't necessarily want to go broke with it in every case. So when it's heads up and we go 2 ways to the flop, I'm going to be out of position and against a player who has seen me get up to shenanigans before. So we see 8-6-5, I check, and I'm going to evaluate based on what he does. In this case, he does decide to bet. This is a board that doesn't favor my under the gun opening range, but favors his button defend range pretty heavily. He makes it 20, which is nearly a pot size bet. I've got nothing to draw to, so with only 2 overs, I think I only have one option, which is fold. Alright, this is the last significant hand of the session. I have ace jack of clubs in the small blind with a button straddle. I open to 20. As I've said before, I think 20 is okay. 15 is probably better, to be honest, coming out of the blinds. It's just going to look really strong no matter what sizing you pick, but yeah, I think 15 is probably better, keep me out of trouble. It does fold around to the cutoff, who jams for 136, and this guy has been kind of, he's a younger guy. He's been kind of chirping at me the whole session about trying to get on the vlog. And he's like, am I going to be on the vlog? And, and every time I tell him the same thing, and hey, it depends. I don't know what kind of hands are going to make the edit, but, he was so persistent in saying that. And then, he jams and I start talking and I'm in the tank, and even the dealer's heckling me. And I'm like, what do I do here? I mean, ace jack suited is okay. I mean, if he's doing this with some middle pairs, I have 2 overs. I do eventually put in the call, and I immediately get the bad news. He has aces. He talked me into calling, and I'm committed to $135 pre with just a suited ace jack. Come on, man, I should be better than that. So we do see the board pick up 1 club, so there's a little bit of a twinkle of life here. And no, there is not. It runs out bad for me. And good for him. He managed to get me all in there. So wrapping up the session, I was in for $223, out for $430. That's a profit of about $200. Over 4 hours, it's $53 per hour. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I owe you one tiny food. Bye.